sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time.
On December 7th, 1941, the world changed. Edgar Lesko was 19 years old when he learned of the attack on Pearl Harbor. This documentary details what the American people had to endure. His memories of the rationing of food, sacrifices that were made, are shared in this documentary.
Hi, Mr. Lesko. How are you today?
Okay, doing pretty good.
Good. Now, what was it like? Do you remember when Pearl Harbor was attacked?
Oh yeah. I was a senior in high school, and I was sitting at the dining room table and doing my homework when I heard on the radio that Pearl Harbor had been bombed. This was quite a shock, and we just followed all the newscasts that afternoon.
So after the attack on Pearl Harbor, what were the changes in the country, living conditions, things of that nature?
Well, there were quite a few. The major one was rationing. You could no longer go to town and buy anything you wanted. You had to have either stamps or other items to tell the dealer that you were able to buy whatever items you wanted. Most of the things that were rationed were shoes and nylons for the ladies. They were the big thing at first. And then, of course, food came along, and we were rationed with meats, sugar, and butter.
Once you had to start rationing these things, how did you get them?
Well, we were issued a ration book, and that would tell the dealer if you were able to buy another item. We always had to have the book with us to go shopping.
So when you say you were given a stamp book, a booklet for rationing, what do you mean by that exactly?
Well, you're given books for the items that were on the ration list, such as shoes. You can only buy so many shoes in a year. And as far as food, you could only buy so much meat, and so much sugar, and so much oleo, and everything was rationed, so you couldn't buy as much as you wanted like the old days.
What did you use instead of using butter?
We were able to buy oleo, and oleo came in a small plastic bag in a pound size, and inside the plastic bag was a little pellet that had dye. And what you would do when you brought the oleo home, you would squeeze the pellet and crush it so that the dye would flow out into the oleo. And then you would knead the butter with your hands so that the dye would spread throughout the oleo so it would make it look like butter. That was the substitute for the butter.
When it came to automobiles, what were some of the changes that you encountered?
Well, when you had gasoline, you would be given a stamp for your windshield, and that would say the letter A. That would mean you were allowed 3 to 4 gallons per week to use. And if you had a small farm or a farm, you were able to get a C stamp, which would allow you to buy an unlimited quantity for your farm.
Your father was in the farming industry.
He had a small farm, and he had C stamps, which meant that he could buy as much gas as he needed.
So that went for all farmers?
All farmers. One of the things they asked us to do was to paint the upper half of the headlights with a black paint. The reason for this was that the glare from the headlights would be reduced into the atmosphere so that enemy planes would not be able to spot where cities were. This would cut down on the glare, so they could not follow their course through the cities so that they would not know where they were. One thing that they also asked us to do was to take our empty toothpaste tubes, which were metal in those days, and we had to take them down to the Memorial Hall where they had a container surrounded by wire so that we could throw our empty toothpaste tubes into that area, and they would take and recycle it.
What would they use the tubes for?
To recycle for war materials.
What kind of material inside the tube would
It was metallic and it was mostly lead.
they might have used that for bullets or something of that nature?
Whatever they needed it for, batteries especially. Another thing that the civilian population was asked to do was to buy war bonds. And the war bonds were used to finance the war. The bonds were selling at 75% of the value, and after 10 years you would get the full value back when you turn the war bonds. Another thing that was happening was that the cigarette companies were donating cigarettes to GIs in various bases around the country, and also hospitals that were the veterans hospitals, and this was a big promotion by most of the tobacco companies, and they would donate these for free. One other thing that the Lucky Strike did, they used to have a package of cigarettes that was green. Well, they changed that to white, no longer green, and because the copper was the main ingredient of the green paint, so that when they advertised it, they said that the Lucky Strike had gone to war, and they changed the color of the packaging from green to white, so it no longer contained the copper.
So they actually changed the color of the cigarette pack to go along with the war effort.
Right.
Well, thank you for giving me your time and your knowledge about these
You're
topics.
welcome.
It's been a very interesting afternoon.